He called me paranoid once when I brought it up as a joke, and we both laughed, so I dropped it. That was 8 months ago, and I hadn't opened this spreadsheet since. It was almost 11 at night, and I was sitting at my kitchen table refreshing an email from a recruiter who had gone quiet on me for the third time in a year. Same pattern. Good conversation, solid follow-up, then nothing. I've been telling myself it was the market, or my timing, or something I said wrong in the screening call. I've been telling myself a lot of things. I had a spreadsheet I'd started about 18 months back, just to keep track. Job leads, freelance introductions, a few referrals that came through people I trusted. I'd stopped updating it somewhere around month 10, because looking at it made me feel like I was building a case against someone I didn't want to build a case against. That night, I opened it anyway. The column on the right was labeled Outcome, and I scrolled through it slowly. Withdrawn. Filled. Ghosted. Filled. No response. Filled. Every single one of them. I went back to the top and started again, and this time I wasn't looking at the outcomes, I was looking at the dates. Every entry had a date. I'd mentioned it to Marcus. Everyone. I said it out loud in my empty kitchen because I needed to hear whether it sounded crazy. Every opportunity one told him about disappeared. It didn't sound crazy. It sounded like something I'd known for a while and just hadn't been willing to say. Marcus and I had been friends for 12 years. We'd met doing odd jobs for the same event company the summer after college. Both of us broke and certain we were about to figure everything out. He was easy to be around, the kind of guy who made every room feel a little less serious. He'd been between things for most of the time I'd known him, picking up short contracts here and there, never quite landing the thing that stuck, but he never seemed bothered by it. That was just Marcus. Most Thursdays we ended up at his place. Takeout on a coffee table, bad TV, and neither of us was actually watching, just talking. It was the kind of friendship that didn't need a reason. That particular Thursday, I remember there were noodle containers pushed to one side, and he was telling me about some freelance thing that had fallen through. Same story I'd heard a few variations of over the years. I listened, told him something would come through, and then mentioned almost as an afterthought that a mid-sized design studio had reached out to me about a contract role. Nothing confirmed yet, just an initial conversation, but it felt promising. Marcus lit up the way he always did when something good happened to me. Big grin, leaned over and clapped me on the shoulder. "That's it," he said. "That's exactly what you've been waiting for, man. What's the studio? Who reached out?" I told him the name. He nodded like he was filing it away, asked who the hiring manager was, said he might know someone there. I didn't think anything of it. That was just how he talked. He always wanted the details because he was genuinely interested, or at least that's what I'd spent 12 years believing. 2 weeks later, I got an email from the studio. Short, polite, the kind of rejection that's clearly a template. They'd moved forward with another candidate. I read it twice, closed my laptop, and told myself it was fine. Freelance life went like this. You got interest, you got your hopes up a little, and then someone else got the job. It happened. What I couldn't explain was the feeling that sat with me after I closed that email. Not disappointment exactly. Something quieter than that, and harder to place. Like the rejection had answered something I hadn't thought to ask yet. We've been the kind of friends who balanced each other out, or that's how I'd always framed it. I was the one who finished things. Marcus was the one who made people want to be in the room. Back in college, he could walk into a conversation cold and have everyone laughing inside 2 minutes. And I used to think that was a kind of talent I didn't have and couldn't learn. So we worked together on things. I'd put in the hours, build the deck, make the thing actually exist, and Marcus would walk it into a room and make it land. It worked well enough that I stopped noticing how the split was structured. After college, that dynamic just continued, quieter and less formal, but still there. I'd hear about something, mention it to Marcus, and he'd get interested and engaged and supportive in that way he had. I told myself that's what good friends did. They showed up. They cared about your wins. Dana brought it up over dinner on a Tuesday, the way she brought up most things sideways like she was mentioning the weather. Dana was my younger sister by 3 years, and she worked close enough to the same industry that our circles overlapped at the edges. She'd never warmed to Marcus, Not fully, though she'd never said anything direct about it. Just a certain flatness in her voice when his name came up. Marcus has been posting about some new creative role, she said. At a studio. I can't remember which one. I said something like good for him and kept eating. You knew about it? She asked. I didn't know anything about it, I said. She nodded and didn't push it, but she looked at me for a second longer than the conversation required. I noted it and filed it away under things I wasn't ready to think about yet. That same week, I got a rejection from a podcast I'd pitched. They were going in-house, the email said. I'd spent a week on that pitch, researched their back catalog, tailor the whole thing. I pulled up their feed to see what in-house meant in practice, clicked on a most recent episode, and heard the intro to a new segment. The voice doing the introduction wasn't one I recognized exactly, but the cadence of it was. The way the sentences landed. The particular rhythm of it. I closed the app and sat with that for a while. I wasn't ready to say what I thought I was hearing, but I'd heard it. There's a point where coincidence stops being a reasonable explanation and becomes a choice you're making about what you're willing to see. I wasn't sure yet how close I was to that point. I told myself I wasn't sure anyway. I didn't want to be the kind of person who ran tests on their friends. I'd spent most of my adult life trying not to be suspicious, not to read into things, not to be the guy who turned every small thing into evidence of something larger. But I was sitting on 12 months of a spreadsheet that I couldn't explain away anymore. I needed to know if I was building a case or losing my mind. So I made something up. I told Marcus I'd gotten a referral from a former coworker, someone he'd never met, at a company I invented on the spot. I gave it a plausible name, gave it a timeline, said the call was penciled in for the following week. I kept my voice easy, the way I always did when I mention opportunities, like it was just something that had come up in conversation. Marcus leaned forward. What's the company called again? He said. I told him the fake name. And this is through Jamie? Which Jamie? You don't know him, I said. What do they do exactly? He was already nodding like he was connecting it to something. Is there a portfolio link or a LinkedIn? I might know someone there. I said I'd send him the details later and change the subject. He let me, but I noticed he came back to it once more before we wrapped up the call. Asked again when the meeting was scheduled. I told him I'd keep him posted. The fake opportunity went nowhere because it never existed. That part was clean. But 3 days later, I made the mistake of mentioning a real one, a branding contract with a regional client I'd been in early conversations with. I don't know why I told him. Habit, maybe. 12 years of telling Marcus things had made it automatic. A week later, the client emailed to say they decided to go in a different direction. I sat with my phone in my hand for a long time after that. I didn't call Marcus. I didn't call anyone. The fake lead had gone nowhere, and the real one had just evaporated, and I was sitting there doing the arithmetic on 12 years of friendship and not liking what the numbers kept coming out to. I gave up the weekend to it. Both days, start to finish, going back through 2 years of texts and emails and calendar invites, pulling every lead I'd ever mentioned out loud or in writing and running it against what happened afterward. I wasn't looking for a pattern anymore. I already knew the pattern. I was measuring it. By Sunday evening, the spreadsheet had 43 rows, 43 opportunities, leads, referrals, pitches, introductions. Some of them small, some of them ones I'd genuinely built toward for months. I went through the outcome column one more time. Withdrawn. Filled. Filled. No response. Filled. Ghosted. Filled. I'd blame the market for most of these. I'd blame my timing, my portfolio, my follow-up. I'd blamed myself in a dozen different ways rather than look at the one variable that kept appearing. Somewhere in the middle of the second pass, I found something I'd missed the first time. A small agency I'd pitched the previous spring had quietly posted a new hire announcement 4 weeks after my pitch landed. I'd seen the announcement at the time and felt the usual low-level sting of it and moved on. I looked at the name again now. It was close enough to Marcus's last name that I'd read straight past it the first time. One letter transposed. The kind of variation you'd use if you didn't want a name search to connect the dots immediately. I stared at it for a long time. Then I wrote it down separately outside the spreadsheet on a piece of paper. I don't know why the paper felt important. It just did. Dana called me the next morning without any setup. I need to ask you something, she said. That campaign you mentioned to me a few months back, the regional one with the outdoor rollout. Did you ever tell Marcus about it? No, I said. That one I kept to myself. She went quiet for a second. His name is on the project credit. I just saw it this morning. Do you want me to send you the screenshot? I said yes, and she sent it before we'd even finished the call. I looked at it while she was still on the line. His name, right there, attached to a project I had never mentioned to him, which meant he wasn't just taking what I handed him. He was finding his way into spaces I hadn't opened for him at all. Joel, Dana said. I know, I said. Do you? She said. Not unkindly. Just directly, the way she always was when she thought I was still giving someone more benefit of the doubt than they'd earned. I didn't answer her. I was still looking at the screenshot. The recruiter had found me. That was the part that made it feel clean. No referral chain I'd have to trace back. No mutual connection Marcus could have threaded himself through. She'd pulled my portfolio from a directory listing, reached out cold, and the fit was close enough that the first call ran 40 minutes over. The studio had been on my radar for years, the kind of place where the work actually meant something. I let myself believe this one was sealed off. The process moved fast. 2 rounds in a week, both of them solid, the kind of conversations where you hang up and feel like you said the right things in the right order. I was one of 2 final candidates. The hiring manager told me that directly on the 3rd call, which I took as a good sign, that they were far enough along to be that specific. Then she said the other candidate came highly recommended by someone on my side. I asked her what she meant by that. Someone in your professional circle, she said. I don't want to get into names at this stage, but the recommendation was strong. I told her that was fine and finished the call professionally, and then sat in my car in the parking structure for a while trying to think of who in my professional circle would be recommending another candidate for the same role I was in final stages for. I couldn't land on anyone. The circle wasn't that wide, and no one I trusted would do that without telling me. That night Marcus texted me. No preamble, just, hey, how'd the big interview go this week? I read it twice. Then I read it again. I had not told Marcus about this job. I had not told him the studio's name, the recruiter's name, the timeline, or that anything was happening this week. I had told no one, specifically because of everything sitting in that spreadsheet. There was no version of that text that made sense unless he already knew, and there was only one way he could already know. I put the phone face down on the table and didn't answer him. I called the recruiter the next morning and kept my voice even. I told her I had a quick question about the process and that I wasn't trying to put her in a difficult position. Then I asked if the other finalist's name was Marcus. She didn't answer right away. The pause lasted maybe 3 seconds, which was 2 seconds longer than it would have taken her to just say no. I can't confirm candidate names, she said. I'm sure you understand. I told her I understood and thanked her and got off the call. I met Dana at a coffee shop that afternoon. I brought the laptop. I walked her through the spreadsheet, the full 43 rows, the dates, the outcome column, the agency hire with the transposed name, the podcast intro I couldn't stop hearing in my head, the studio rejection from 18 months back that now looked like the first data point instead of coincidence. I showed her the screenshot she'd sent me. I showed her Marcus's text about the big interview. Dana didn't argue with any of it. She sat across from me and read through the whole thing carefully, and when she looked up, she didn't say, I told you so, which I appreciated more than I said. I know someone at that studio, she said. Not the recruiter, the hiring manager directly. I think I can get you a real conversation with her before they close the process. I asked her how she knew her. We worked together 2 years ago, Dana said. I can reach out today if you want. I said yes. I'm over at where silence ends. Subscribe if any of this sounds familiar. I spent the drive home thinking about whether to call Marcus first. Part of me wanted to. 12 years is a long time, and some part of me was still looking for an explanation that let him be the person I thought he was. But I kept coming back to the same problem. If I called him, he'd know I knew, and whatever the hiring manager could tell me would get muddied before I had a chance to hear it clearly. I needed to know exactly what had been said and done before I decided what to do with any of it. So I didn't call him. I let his text sit unanswered, and I waited for Dana to hear back. Whatever the hiring manager told me, I'd deal with it then. I just needed to hear it first. The hiring manager's name was Claire, and she'd set the meeting up as a follow-up conversation, which is how Dana had framed it when she made the introduction. The room was small, a round table, 2 chairs, a window that looked out onto a fire escape. Claire was measured in the way people get when they've been doing this long enough to have seen most things. She shook my hand, offered coffee, and got to it. Within 10 minutes, she had 2 portfolio submissions open on her laptop, and she turned the screen toward me. "I want to ask you about some of this," she said. "Take your time." I looked at both documents. The one on the left was mine. The one on the right had Marcus's name on it, and when I started reading the project descriptions, I felt something go very still inside me. The language was close. Not paraphrased, not inspired by close. The way I described my approach to a brand identity project I'd worked on alone for 6 weeks. The way I'd explained the client's brief. Phrases I remembered using because I'd used them at dinner with Marcus 6 weeks before my first interview. "He named you as a reference," Claire said. "He described the 2 of you as long-term collaborators. He said several of these projects were joint work." She kept her voice even, but I could hear what was underneath it. "He submitted his application 48 hours after your first interview with us. I need to ask you directly whether any part of what he's claiming is accurate." I told her no. I told her the projects were mine, individually, and that I could show her. I opened my laptop and pulled up the original files. Timestamps, version histories, client email threads with my name in the header. I walked her through 3 of them, and she stopped me after the 3rd. She looked at the screen for a moment, and then closed Marcus's submission. "Thank you," she said. "I'm sorry you're in this position." The apology was genuine, and it made everything feel more concrete somehow, not less. I drove to Marcus's apartment that evening. I knocked, and he opened the door with an easy smile, the same one he'd been giving me for 12 years. "Hey, what's going on?" he said. "You didn't text." "I know," I said. "Can I come in?" He stepped back and let me in. The same apartment, the same coffee table, takeout containers from earlier in the week still stacked near the kitchen. I didn't sit down. "The studio called me in," I said. "Claire, show me your submission." The smile didn't disappear all at once. It just stopped working. "Joel, listen. The design studio 18 months ago," I said. "The podcast pitch last spring. The agency with your name listed under a different spelling. The branding client 3 weeks ago. The campaign Dana found your credit on." "That's not," he started. "Some of that is just how this industry works. People talk. Leads move around. It's not like there's some rule that says." "You applied to the same role I was in final stages for," I said, using descriptions of my work. "And you named me as a reference without asking me." He was quiet. 43, I said. "That's how many I counted." He sat down on a couch. He didn't say anything for a while. Then he tried one more time. "We've always helped each other out," he said. "That's what we do. That's what this whole thing has been." I looked at him for a moment. Then I picked up my bag and walked to the door. Marcus's text came in at 7:43 the next morning. It was long. I could see that before I even opened it, the kind of length that means someone spent the night composing and reconsidering and composing again. I read it once. He was sorry if things had gotten confused. He'd always believed in my work. That was why he'd referenced it. He thought of it as collaborative even when it technically wasn't. He said I was one of the most talented people he knew and that he'd never meant for any of it to land the way it had. Near the end, he said he hoped I wasn't going to let a misunderstanding erase 12 years. I put the phone down and made coffee and didn't respond. Claire called that afternoon. She didn't lead with formalities. "We'd like to offer you the role," she said. "I want to call personally rather than send it through the recruiter." I said thank you and meant it. "The other candidate has been removed from consideration," she said. "I also want you to know that I've had a few conversations with people I trust in the industry. His name is going to be attached to a story now. I thought you should know that, because some of it will probably come back to you." "That's fine," I said. "It should be," she said, and left it there. The mutual friends started reaching out by the end of the week. A few of them were just confused, asking what had happened between me and Marcus because he'd gone quiet on the group thread. One of them, a guy named Patrick, who'd known both of us for most of the 12 years, called me directly. "I should have told you this a while ago," Patrick said. He tried something similar with me about 2 years back. A client I'd mentioned to him ended up getting a pitch from someone I didn't recognize, and when I looked into it, the contact details traced back to Marcus. I didn't say anything because I didn't want to make it a whole thing. I asked him why he was telling me now. "Because it sounds like it became a whole thing anyway," he said. After I got off the phone, I sat with that for a while. 2 years ago, which meant while I was still counting coincidences, someone else had already seen the pattern and decided it was easier to stay quiet. I didn't blame Patrick exactly. I understood the calculation, but it sat with me. The question that kept coming back wasn't about Marcus. It was about the work itself. How many of those 43 opportunities would have landed? How many rooms I might have gotten into? How many times I'd blamed my own pitch, my own timing, my own ability, when the variable I hadn't accounted for was sitting across a coffee table from me asking for the hiring manager's name. 3 months in, and I was sitting at my own desk inside a studio I'd spent years looking at from the outside. That part still caught me sometimes, not dramatically, just in small moments. Opening my laptop in the morning in that specific room. Having a key card that worked on that specific door. The work was good, not because everything had aligned perfectly or because the role was easier than I expected. It was good because when I had a thought in a meeting, it stayed mine until I decided what to do with it. Nobody across the table was filing details away. Nobody was asking follow-up questions I couldn't account for later. I hadn't understood how much of my energy had been going toward a problem I hadn't fully named yet until that energy was just available to me again. Dana came by the office on a Wednesday with lunch she'd picked up from a place around the corner. We ate at a small table near the window and caught up on the usual things. And then she mentioned, the way she mentioned most things, that she'd blocked Marcus on everything the day after the confrontation. She said 2 of her industry contacts had quietly done the same. The story had traveled the way Claire said it would. I asked her if there'd been any noise about it. "Not noise," she said. "Just people knowing." That was enough. Marcus's final message came on a Tuesday evening about 2 months after that. Shorter than the first one, no attempt at explanation this time. Just a single line asking if we could talk. I read it. I set the phone face down on the desk. I went back to the project on my screen and finished what I was working on. I don't talk about my opportunities before they happen anymore. Not because I'm afraid of what might get back to someone, but because I finally understand something I should have understood earlier. Some doors only stay open when you walk through them alone. 12 years of friendship taught me exactly which doors those are. I just never wanted to believe the lesson while I was still inside it. I'm over at where silence ends. Did you ever share something with someone you trusted and watch it disappear before you could reach it yourself?